Question came in from a regular viewer named Martin. Do you have any advice for Jacko that would actually help him with his suicidal thoughts, panic attacks, sleep deprivation, etc.? Now, I have done quite a few videos about suicide on this channel. All of them are demonetized, if not banned in your region. I mean, it's really pathetic that YouTube is so much more strictly censored than HBO, than Fox TV, than the CBC in Canada. I mean, these are all issues we can talk about on public television in Canada, for sure. But YouTube is more censored. Now, if you've been following this channel for a while, I have been through it, people. I mean, I could not count the number of times in my life in which I would have preferred to die than to continue living. And I phrase it that way advisedly because I think that is a much more serious decision to come to than merely suicidal ideation. Where the point is, it's not that you're fantasizing about killing yourself, but where you get to the point in your life where you say, I don't want to live this life anymore. This is so heartbreaking or so terrible. I'd rather not continue. I'd rather do the decomposing corpse thing than the waking up and eating my breakfast and continuing my life thing. Now, I would say probably the single most extreme situation, this is why I mentioned it in response to this question, did combine real-world problems, psychological and emotional sources of stress and problems, with health problems as follows. I was living in a huge apartment building in the middle of Saskatchewan. There are not very many huge towering buildings like that in Saskatchewan, in the whole province. This is in Regina, Saskatchewan. So if you know, downtown, there are only a few big towers. But this was really a huge tower apartment building. And my apartment building did have a lot of East Indian immigrants living in it. We had a couple of Cree and Ojibwe people. It was a tower building, and we had old retired white people. And when I started getting bug bites on my legs, I assumed that it was due to fleas from dogs. That kind of thing. That when I was out walking, I was getting these bites on my feet and ankles walking on the sidewalk. And what I was told, hashtag not racist, but eventually when I discovered this, was that the East Indian families within the building, culturally or what have you, they would actually share bedding between, there were a lot of them were housewives raising kids there, and it makes sense. I mean, for us maybe would be hand-me-downs, but actually things like duvet covers and bedding, what have you, they would exchange between apartments, and that this had accelerated the spread of bed bugs throughout the whole building. Now, different people react to bed bug bites in different ways. I did look into it over the years at several points. There are several different breeds and species of bed bugs, so not all bed bugs leave the same bites on you. I was bitten by bed bugs in Southeast Asia once that I remember. Very memorable. And the type of, that was another thing that threw me, was the type of swelling and the way the bite looked when I was getting these bed bug bites in Saskatchewan. It did not look like the bed bug bites in Southeast Asia. So when I was bitten for the first time in Southeast Asia, I really looked at them in the mirror. I really tried to remember the feeling. So, okay, remember this so that in future you can identify it when you get bitten by bed bugs. And then here I was in Canada, and it's a different breed or different variety of the insect, and it didn't have the same effect on me at all. But one of the main effects of the bed bug bites was sleep deprivation. I could not sleep all night. The itching, the physical sensation of discomfort caused by the bite, not pain, but the distraction and the itching, and I think just on an instinctual level, it caused restlessness. I would guess it's an instinct, get up and get out of here, you have parasites biting you. I'm just a wild speculation. But I would absolutely, I would go the whole 12 hours, through the night, not sleeping. And sometimes it wasn't a ton of bites. I might have 3 bites or something. but it was much, much worse than the effect of mosquito bites on me in terms of my reaction to it. Now, when did this happen in my life? My relationship with my ex-wife was getting worse and worse. That's really not an honest way to describe the situation. I had figured out who my ex-wife really was in contrast to who she was pretending to be. And as a result, my opinion of her was getting worse, and my outlook on the future of the relationship was getting worse. And, I deeply regretted the trust I'd put in her, the situation I'd got into with her. So you can be with someone for a couple of years and think you know them, and then figure out who they really are. Happens to all kinds of people. Whatever their secrets are, whether subtle or obvious or what have you. Not everyone's experience, but some people in the audience are going to be going, I know just what you're saying. And some of you had that experience when you were teenagers, and some in your 20s, and some in your 30s, some in your 40s. But whether it's a coworker or a lover or your best friend, sometimes you know somebody for a couple of years before you really know who they are. So I wasn't really, just to be honest, I wasn't really upset about that in a short-term way. But my ex-wife had, for very silly reasons, bought an airplane ticket to go to Taiwan. I could tell all the details about this trip, but it's not that interesting. She really didn't. I'm just saying there's silly reasons. At that time, she really didn't have any particularly good reason to go to Taiwan. She applied for research funding, and she made a trip to Taiwan, leaving me alone in Saskatchewan. And I was writing to her saying, I went through all the stages of this with the sleep deprivation. But look, I'm getting these bites. I don't think it can be bed bugs. They don't look like bed bug bites. They don't feel like bed bugs. And I'm up all night. And is it just, that these people have fleas on their dogs? What's the situation here? The combination of extreme hopelessness about my marriage and who my ex-wife was, she was sending me really nasty, really selfish emails back from where she was in Taiwan. She was not being an angel. I think we did Skype calls or something too. We had some phone calls back and forth. She was not being a nice or loving or supportive person. So the realization of who she was, the realizations about my situation at the university there, not worth describing, but I was pursuing a combination of original research and humanitarian work and this meaningful life linked to Cree and Ojibwe and First Nations people, and was this kind of bright and inspiring thing I wanted to do, and then finding out that no, it's going to be impossible for a bunch of reasons, but mostly just due to the abysmally low quality of universities in Canada. And at that time, I was emailing other professors and other departments and universities around the world saying, well, look, if I can't do this here, where can I do it? So that was really deep, really depressing news that way. And a lot of depressing stuff. This is also the period of time where I was having to look at throwing all my books in the garbage. Like, you worked so hard to get these books and study these books, and now it's not going to be part of your life, not part of your future, and, just a lot of loss. It's very real. So it is, needless to say, this is definitely one of the times in my life where I'd absolutely hit this point where it's like, I don't want to, continue. It was one of the points where you come to the cold, hard, rational decision that you'd rather be dead than alive. And of course, what's making it worse is my ex-wife is not being sympathetic or loving or supportive or even just good or even treating me in a manner that's dignified or nice or even professional. My ex-wife is being awful to me. She's being unbelievably horrible and self-centered and cruel when I talk to her about the reality of the situation I'm in. And, to give a little bit of, make it a little bit more sympathetic, I think for her, she responded to it in a way that is, in the psychological sense, narcissistic. She would respond to any of this as if it were a criticism of a shortcoming of hers. Like if I say, the situation at this university is horrible, she's part, of course, she was the reason I was at that university. She was a professor at that university. We were actually violating the rules that we were married, but I was technically a student sleeping with a professor. The rules didn't make exceptions. We were already married before she became a professor, but nevertheless. But, and she would react to that as if it was me complaining about her or complaining about the relationship, where it's like, no, I'm telling you I'm hopeless. So that's human. It's human. But it's true. She was a very selfish, very self-centered, and indeed very narcissistic kind of person. She also has redeeming qualities, which are not the subject of this video. What is my advice for people who are, like Jacko, suicidal, experiencing panic attacks, or what have you? Well, I've made a lot of different videos talking about this from different angles. One of the many tragedies of the professionalization of mourning, the professionalization of sorrow, the medicalization of human misery, is that people have been trained to separate sorrow from the circumstances, the life experiences, the challenges that cause that sorrow, or in a sense, that are the sorrow. Okay? My situation, when I was so sad there, oh man. And again, I was already vegan. I was already an ethical, I was completely, whatever. I was completely into this vegan thing. And we had to have a fumigator come and spray the apartment 4 times. And every time he came, I had to research the chemical being used. We had to pack up all of our belongings, like everything had to be in garbage bags. Like everything you want, every item of clothing, everything, to have the apartment fumigated. And then I had to research the chemical, the pesticide, to try to ensure that it wouldn't have a negative health effect on my pregnant wife, because that was into the time when she was pregnant with my firstborn daughter. And then, this isn't enough, so I would do all this. My wife would be at work. I'd have to pack up everything in a garbage bag. I would actually pack them up and put them on the porch of the apartment. And then we'd have to go and check into a hotel for like 3 days. Because again, you do the reading. It'd be like, well, there can be some negative health effects from this fumigation, but not if you stay away for, let's say 48 hours or 72 hours. It'd be like, well, you're pregnant, so let's make it 4 days or something. Then go live in a hotel. And let me tell you something. Saskatchewan is not Thailand. Going and staying in a hotel in downtown Regina, Saskatchewan was also horrible. And that's after she came back, though. The darkest period was when my wife was away, and I didn't even know that these were bed bugs, and I didn't have the fumigator come. I was trying to figure this out, and then I talked to the building manager and found out. She said, "Oh, these people, they share their bedclothes, and yeah, the whole building is full of bed bugs as a result." Could have told me, but anyway, I went through all this misery, and the misery, of course, is made worse by not knowing. Obviously, the solution for why I was feeling so miserable at that time had to deal with grappling with the actual circumstances, with the actual problem, and change them. So look, I've just blamed the medicalization of the problem, the professionalization of the role of psychiatrists, and so on. But I think we all know there's a shallower level on which we also all learn this in childhood. Because whatever is as a child, whatever is making you unhappy, or whatever is perceived to make you unhappy, your parents and your teachers are going to try to put the burden on you for you to change your attitude, for you to change your outlook. Because one thing's for certain, the teacher isn't going to change the lessons, the school isn't going to change anything they're going to do, your parents don't want to change their lives, they're not going to change their work schedule. Most of the time, for most of us, your parents don't actually want to do anything to help you. Not if it involves inconveniencing them in the slightest way. It may not be your experience with your parents. I mean, it was with mine to a ridiculous extent. So children get told a lot to change their attitude. Children get told a lot to stop crying and be happy just because, while whatever it is that's making them happy continues to be a problem. I can remember, my parents were communists, and they were extremists. They were not moderate communists. But I mean, at one point, they hired a Filipina nanny to take care of me because they just wanted to do their own thing. They wanted to go to work and go to swingers clubs, do their own thing. They lived their own crazy left-wing, libertine communist lifestyle. It wasn't that much of a priority in their lives. And I can remember trying to say to my mother, and she was actually on a business call, because even when they were home, they weren't taking care of me. They were, they were working on many time zones. So they'd be having a business call from London or Hong Kong, even though they're at home. They're not really parenting, And I can remember really trying to say to my mother, look, we have to get rid of this Filipina nanny, this particular au pair, this particular woman was really terrible. Not all of them were. Some were better, some were worse. Of the women, only one was Filipina. The others were other ethnicities. It's very hard for a child to make that argument, whenever you're 8 years old or something, to try to convince your parents, look, there's a problem, and I need you to actually do something. And it's very easy for parents and teachers, as authority figures, to slip into the mode of saying, oh, no, the problem is your perception. The problem is your attitude. And what that means is the problem is you, okay? And it's not, right? The reason I was so unhappy when I was in Saskatchewan, I was married to a terrible person. Let's put it this way. I was married to the wrong person. I was married to someone who very fundamentally lied to me about who she was. I bought the package, and in some ways I didn't find out what was under the wrapping paper until a little too late, guys. Happens to the best of us. Happens to the worst of us, too. Let's just say this. Worse things have happened to nicer people. I'm married to the wrong person. I'm enrolled at the wrong university. University itself is a disaster, and that was on paper. A lot of the university's problems are objectively proven. They were on the edge of being shut down just at the time I shouldn't. They had a lot of objectively real problems, not just my impression. The particular department I'm in, I never met a single other student studying the language. There were all these other problems. I'm studying a language that, it's very, very hard to learn in very, very hard circumstances. And then I find out there's no way I can move it. There were even, by the way, part of the problem was just a technical problem with how my credits were transferred from the University of Toronto to this university, and it completely ruined my plans. Not worth getting. So I'm just saying, a lot of these are just objectively real problems that have emotional consequences, but they aren't about my attitude and my perception. And yeah, sleep deprivation caused by bed bugs, itching, the pain in my legs and so on, being up all night with swollen bedbug bites. And you can solve those in any order. You can solve all of them or not. But you know what? You know what would have solved all my problems? Running away. Not joking. If I could have just taken a vacation, if I could have even bought a bus ticket and taken a Greyhound bus from that horrible apartment to go to my mother's house in Toronto. My mother and I were not on speaking terms for over 10 years. If I just had a supporting and loving family anywhere, even if it was 1,000 miles away, if I could have taken a break and literally escaped the university, the woman I was married to, the bed bugs, the infestation, the sleep deprivation, if I could have gotten a decent night's sleep, decent meal, you could add a few other things or something there. Very, very hard being vegan in Saskatchewan too at that time. It's true, actually. If I could have eaten broccoli and some decent vegetables, would have helped. Low key, not the biggest part of the problem. Yeah, you know what? We live in a culture that vilifies you from quote unquote running away from your problems because it's convenient for people in positions of authority to make the problem into anything other than the problem. To make the problem into your attitude and you. And as an adult, or if you can, as a child or a teenager, you have to have the self-discipline, clarity of focus and purpose to say, no, my problems are my problems. And long term, there are going to be solutions. Like if you hate your job, you can get a new job. Whatever it is, those things take time. But sure, short term, I don't think there's any course of treatment or any course of therapy that could probably do you as much good. It doesn't even have to be a vacation in Thailand. You could probably just take a Greyhound bus to the next bleak, hopeless city down the road. if there is a way to get yourself some distance. Distance can lead to detachment. Detachment can lead to introspection, analysis, better understanding. And once you have that better analysis of your problems, ultimately, you have to push on to solutions.